Hi everybody, this is Lainey from Camp Joy Farms. Tonight we're going to do the third in my Seedsapalooza series. I'm going to talk to you about which tomato seeds that I have. I've really been wanting to get to my tomato seeds. I also love the pole beans, so I'm going to be doing those probably next. But I thought tonight I'd start with the tomato seeds. But first, you know I love catalogs. I love getting them in the mail. And I just wanted to share with you a few of them that I got over the last week in the mailbox. I got the newest catalog from Wilhite Seeds. May want to try that company. I've ordered from them. I got the newest catalog from Territorial Seeds. Very pretty cover on that catalog. Ordered a good bit from them last year. One of my favorite catalogs to get, and I have perused it from front to back already, is from Seed Savers Exchange. All of their beautiful heirloom seeds. I'm shocked to know how many I've actually ordered, but I also see a lot of things I still would like to order. Here's the newest catalog from Johnny's. Call it a catalog or you can call it a reference book. Same thing. It's a beautiful catalog, but it's also a great reference book to have. And then I did order the larger catalog from Baker Seeds, the one that's about 1 inch thick, but they also send a smaller catalog. It's not as thick, but it covers the basic things they have in their larger catalog. And I guess they just send this to everybody that's ordered from them in the last year or so, because I get that every year as well. But I do love to get their larger one, even though I have to pay for it. I really enjoy getting it. Now with the tomato seeds, I always have to decide how I'm going to present things to you because vegetables are different and how they get categorized can be different. With tomatoes, I'm just doing the broad range again. I think I'm just going to show you the heirloom seeds that I have. Then I'm going to jump to the hybrids. And then I'm going to show you, I've broken out separately the ones that are cherry tomatoes or little pear tomatoes. I'm going to do those separately. Before I start though, every now and then I might say the word determinate or indeterminate or semi-determinate. And that, I wanted to just cover that so that it doesn't cause any confusion for anyone that doesn't know. I like to give the definitions kind of in my words, how I would speak them out loud, rather than anything really technical. For determinate tomatoes, if a seed packet says they're determinate, what that means is they set their fruit and their flowers in a specified amount of times. Like they might put off all their tomatoes, say, in a week or two period. That's kind of like on the last video of my Seedsapalooza series when we talked about bush beans versus pole beans. And pole beans might take a lot longer to vine up and get as tall as they're going to get and all before they set a lot of beans. But then they might keep producing all the way to the fall, till the frost. Whereas bush beans are a little bit quicker, but they kind of come and they produce, they set their flowers and they produce all their beans within a week or so. And then sometimes you might get a second set out of them. A lot of times you don't. The bean is just done by that point, the plant is. So the bush beans come and go kind of quickly. The pole beans take a while. It's kind of the same things with determinate and indeterminate tomatoes. Determinate tomatoes kind of grow smaller. If you kind of can compare that like a bush bean too. They kind of grow smaller, but they'll only get to like a certain height, say, the most maybe 3 foot tall. And then they'll set their flowers and all their tomatoes will come kind of quickly. Whereas an indeterminate might just keep growing and growing and growing all during the season. And they call that vining. And it might keep vining, for months and get really unruly and you have to stake it. And sometimes it'll go over a fence, if you have it growing against a fence. And then when it starts putting out its tomatoes, it might have just round and round and round of production all the way to the fall. So that's the difference between those two. You might hear the word semi-determinate every now and then, and that is a tomato plant that still grows kind of small. It may get a little bit bigger than a regular determinate, but it still stays kind of like a small bushier plant. It doesn't vine and get really, really long. But the difference is when it does go to set its flowers and its fruit, it may go ahead and set fruit all the way to the fall. So it's not as large as a regular indeterminate, but it sets fruit for a lot longer than a regular determinate. So that's the difference. It's not a big deal. If you hear me say the word, I just wanted to be sure that I covered that. I'm going to jump right in because I don't want to have it too long a video. I want to be able to kind of get in and get out with it, but I still have a lot of seeds. You know how I am with my seeds. So there's still a lot of ground to cover, but we'll try to kind of hurry through it. I'm gonna break these down. These are my heirlooms. Let me say that first. But I'm just gonna show them to you according to the companies that I bought them from. I separated them according to companies. I feel like that'll be a lot easier. The first one is called a Delicious Tomato by Burpee. It's just a beautiful red tomato, but you can't tell it from the packaging, but these tomatoes can get up to about 2 pounds. And it says on the back that it's the world record holder for largest tomato. So, and I have found, you know, the Burpee seeds and all do just fine. They do really good. But that would be a good one to try to get a large tomato. The second one I have from Burpees is called the Long Keeper. Burpee's Long Keeper. And what is so good about this tomato is when you pick it and put it in your house, it'll stay good on your counter for about 6 to 12 weeks. And that's kind of crazy. I mean, that's unreal. So if you want to keep them, maybe until you get a lot at one time so that you can can them, a lot of times you would grow a determinate for that reason, because you would get all of your tomatoes pretty quickly so that you can can them. But with this Long Keeper, you could do the same thing, even though it's an indeterminate. And if you could keep gathering up tomatoes for 6 to 12 weeks before you started canning, that would be great. The next company I'm going to jump to is Johnny's. Now, they don't have pictures on their packets, but I still like to show you the packet. This is the first one from Johnny's. It's a red tomato called a Nepal. And it just puts like a 10 to 12 ounce tomato, which is a good sized tomato. This one is called the Speckled Roman. The Speckled Roman is actually a red plum tomato. And when we say plum tomato, it's instead of being round, it's kind of an oblong tomato. They don't get as big as regular tomatoes, but this is what people use for canning a lot. It's red and it has yellow stripes on it. It's called a Speckled Roman, and it's a beautiful, beautiful tomato. The reason a lot of people use plum tomatoes for canning is because they're not as juicy as a regular tomato. You know how when you go to slice a really good, ripe, big red slicing tomato, you end up with a counter full of water? Well, the plum tomatoes, sometimes they call them Roma tomatoes, they're not as juicy. They're mostly meat, and they don't have as many seeds and seed cavities that are really juicy that you have to deal with. A lot of times it's just, you can pop these in boiling water, you can pull them out, slide the skins off, and then pretty much the whole thing is just ready to go in your jar to make tomatoes. You don't end up with just tons of water and seeds that don't have any meat to them. All tomatoes are good canned, but the Roma tomatoes are what a lot of people go on and use to make tomato paste with and tomato purees, because they just don't have as much water and juice in them as some of the other tomatoes do. They're more meaty. Okay, this one from Johnny's is called a Moskvich. It's a Russian tomato. It was developed over in Russia. And since it was developed in Russia, what is good about it is it can be planted when the weather is still kind of cold. So I could either plant it very early down here, or it would be a good one to grow maybe up north where your springs stay a lot cooler than mine. This one, the packaging is typical Laney. I've got all kind of little stuff written on there. I started to plant this one last year and didn't, so I have information on there about where to plant it in my garden, but I didn't end up planting it. But anyway, it's called an Arkansas Traveler. A lot of people have heard about that tomato. And I picked it up when I was in Arkansas. That's why I grabbed this one. I got it from River City Feed and Seed, and I believe I was in Russellville, Arkansas when I got this. And I just thought, well, while I'm here and while I'm in this feed and seed store, I'm going to get me some Arkansas tomato seeds. I've heard good and bad about them. They're a lot of people's go-to tomato in that area. I've heard other people say they're so-so, you know, that they don't grow as well as some of the other kinds that they have. I don't know, because I haven't grown it. If you've grown the Arkansas Traveler and you love it or you hate it, let me know. It's a pink tomato. Doesn't make really big tomatoes, but, you know, they've been around a long time. They're an heirloom, and a lot of people swear by them. So I would love to know what you think if you've grown that tomato before. I have the Black Crim. This is a really good tomato. I hear nothing but good about it. I have not grown it yet. I have it from Johnny's, and from Fairy Morse. I jumped to the Fairy Morse seeds. And Fairy Morse heirloom seeds, I haven't grown the tomatoes in it yet. Yes, well, I've grown the Cherokee Purple, but I grew it from plant starts that I bought at a nursery, not from these seeds. But anyway, I've had nothing but good luck with Fairy Morse heirloom seeds in the bean varieties. So I'm looking forward to growing the tomatoes. Also from Fairy Morse, I have the Abe Lincoln Tomato. And when these grow on the vine, they're supposed to kind of grow in clusters, which a lot of tomatoes do, but these can grow as many as like 9 tomatoes on one cluster. And they're about 12-ounce tomatoes. So that's a pretty good deal to grow on there. This variety has been around for over 100 years. This is the Cherokee Purple Tomato. As I said, I grew it last year from plant starts, not from these seeds. But I'm going to tell you what. This is the tomato that I'm going to compare all other tomatoes to. I loved this tomato last year. I just absolutely loved it. I had heard good things about it, but you never know. And I'm not a tomato expert. I am just learning to grow tomatoes. I'm a lot more comfortable growing beans and things like that. But I put out some transplants that I bought at the hardware store at an Ace Hardware. And they grew fine and they did good. But just what was amazing to me though was how good they were. They don't, now on here it looks all kind of purple. They're a dark tomato. This makes it look more pink and red. But when it actually grows on the vine, it's kind of got a purplish bottom. And then the shoulders, the top of the tomato kind of still stays a green color. It'll eventually get ripe, but I'm telling you, you can go ahead and pick them when those shoulders are still green, and they're just delicious. Last summer, I just got in the habit, I would be out in the garden till late, and I would come in and throw together something for supper for everyone, and I just got in the habit of slicing tomatoes, putting them on a platter, and then I would make this little tomato dip, I called it, earlier in the evening because it needs to sit in the refrigerator a little bit. But I would just put some mayonnaise, I would put some dried dill, I would put a little basil salt mixture that I have called Crazy Jane's. Crazy Jane's basil seasoning, I think it's called. And maybe a little garlic powder. And I'd put that in the mayonnaise, stir it up, put it in the refrigerator. And then all I had to do when I came in for supper that night was just slice the tomatoes, get out that mayonnaise mixture, and we just ate it up. It was so good. And these Cherokee Purple tomatoes were the best. I just couldn't get over how good they were. They just have I don't know, a deeper taste. They don't just hit you with a lot of acid. They're not real sweet. They were just good. And if you don't do anything else this year, try to grow a Cherokee Purple Tomato. You're going to love it. This is the Aunt Rubies German Green Tomato from Fairy Morse. This is a beefsteak tomato, but it's meant to be green at full ripeness. So this is what it looks like when it's fully ripe. You don't sit there and wait for it to turn red. This one from Fairy Morse called the Mortgage Lifter. Now these vines can get really long on this Mortgage Lifter, and these can grow like 2 pounds or more. Supposedly it's named after a man who selected the seeds and came up with this variety, and he was able to sell the plants for like $1 each many years ago and pay off his mortgage. I wish I could do that. I'm trying, little by little. This tomato is called the Big Red. This tomato was a popular homegrown tomato for many, many, many years. Some of your grandparents probably grew this one. This one is called the Big Rainbow. And these tomatoes can get up to about 2 pounds each as well. And when you slice them, they keep this orangey color with the yellow. And when you slice them, that mottled color is still on the inside too. You don't just slice it open and it's orange or yellow, it's both. So that's why they call it the Big Rainbow Tomato. This one is called the Homestead Tomato. I admit when I bought this pack, I just assumed it was a hybrid or something like that. It just looks like a perfectly little bred tomato that's hybrid, but it's not. This was actually created in Florida in the 1950s. And it was developed specifically to set fruit in summer heat. That's why it was created. So it's a semi-determinate tomato, but that's why I'm interested in it, and that's why I want seeds from it, is because it is specifically developed for Florida weather, which is not too different from where I am in South Louisiana. Parts of Florida are directly east of us, a lot of the top part of Florida. Of course, it goes south after that, so they might even have a different climate than me to grow in. But the top parts of Florida are probably a whole lot like mine. This one I did grow. It's the Roma Vf Tomato. Did not know when I grew it that it was an heirloom, but it is. And it's a plum tomato. You see the shape of it is just elongated. It's not a little round tomato like a lot of them are. This one did great. I did not grow it from transplants. I actually stuck the seeds in the ground and I just grew it just like that. And they came up. I had, I think, 11 or 12 plants that came up and stayed. They didn't wither or get sick or anything like that. So I ended up with a whole lot of these Roma tomatoes, which I canned, and it was spring of 2020, and I still have some that we're eating on. Whenever I make chili or a big pot of spaghetti and things like that, I always throw a can of those in there, a jar of those. Okay, I don't have a lot of tomatoes from Hoss Tools. I have a lot of Hoss seeds for other things, but for tomatoes, all I have is the Brandywine pink tomato. And this is very old and dates back, the Brandywine tomatoes and all date back to like the 1800s. So this is a very old tomato. From Johnny's, I also have one called a Brandywine. I believe they make a Brandywine red, which probably is what I have from Johnny's. And then they make a Brandywine pink, which is what I have from Hoss Tools. These are very old varieties. Lots of people plant them. So far, I've just been pretty dependent on what I got from the transplants at the hardware store. I did grow a few tomatoes. I have never started my own seeds for tomato plants. So the ones that I did grow, like this Roma tomato, I just planted the seeds in the ground, prayed, babied them, and they came up. And I have another kind or two that I did that to as well. And you can do that. It even says on the back of the tomato packages that if you wait for the weather to warm up, you can plant these seeds directly in the ground. It just takes a while. You get a jump on it if you either buy transplants from a nursery or something, or you start the seeds in little pots inside with grow lights and things like that. You get a big jump on your season. But it can be done. If nothing else, if that's all you can do, go ahead and put some in the dirt. They'll grow. I'm jumping to this company called Seeds for the South. I don't know if I've showed you anything. I may have showed you Seeds for the South for bush beans. I'm not sure. But this is a Rutgers tomato. And it's a small little tomato it makes. It's only about 6 ounces. This variety has been around since like the 1920s. It was actually developed, this particular variety was selected and developed to sell to the Campbell Soup Company and to Heinz. Isn't that unusual? And it's still around. They eventually, I think, abandoned this variety and to create varieties that they could harvest easier with machines. But that was the variety, and that was why it was created in the 1920s. This one is called the Super Sioux, S-I-O-U-X, like Sioux Indians. Now these only get about 4 ounces. It's also been known in the past as the Super Lakota. So if you've ever grown a Super Lakota tomato, it's the same thing. This one from Seeds from the South is called a Marglobe. I also have it from my Circle T feed and seed from the co-op that I get. It's the same seed. This was probably a couple of bucks for these few seeds from Seeds from the South. I got a good many more in this package, and it was $1 for all of these Marglobe seeds. So can't beat that. You can't beat that. The Marglobe tomato actually was developed, the state of Florida had just a terrible time with tomatoes and almost lost their whole entire industry. This Marglo variety was created to see if it could come in and really start growing decades ago in Florida. And it did, and it took off. And they kind of credit the Marglo tomato for saving the tomato industry in Florida. So that's unusual. But if it's that hardy, you know, hopefully I can grow it. Hopefully you could grow it, and it'll do fine. It's been around a long time. It's a well-known tomato, so stick with it if it works. Now we're going to jump to Baker Creek. I love my seeds I get from Baker Creek. This is Dr. Weiss's yellow tomato. And it's an heirloom from a man called Dr. John Weiss. It's an orangey yellow tomato. They call it a yellow, but it's kind of tangerine orange color. Now these can grow up to 28 ounces. So these can grow way over a pound if you let it. So, and I have this in my schematic for this year. I want to try these this year. I want to try every one of them. I really, just going through all these tomato seeds just to do this video has just got me so excited. I can't do them all. I can't do them all. But I have managed to fit a good many more than I thought into my plan. And, you know, that's just the spring coming up. There's also the fall. I'm going to put more out for the fall. And I'm going to try a lot of these varieties and see what I can get going with them. This is the Hungarian Heart. This dates before the 1900s. This is from the 1800s. It's from Hungary. And it's an ox heart shaped tomato. You see how it's shaped kind of like a heart? It's fat at the top with a pointed bottom. When you see those kind of tomatoes, that's called an ox heart shape. This is Wood's famous Bremer tomato. And it was introduced by T.W. Wood & Sons Company many, many years ago. This is Martino's Roma tomato. It's another one of the plum tomatoes. It's called the Roma tomatoes that you make paste and all that of. Very well-known heirloom variety, that one. This one, I can't wait to grow. I got to find somewhere to stick this in there this year. I'm just going to have to, even if it's one plant. But this is the Paul Robeson tomato. It's considered like a dark brick red or a black tomato. It's supposed to have a really good flavor. And incidentally, just right before I did this video a few minutes ago, someone on YouTube was talking about growing those and how good they were. They've already grown them, but I intend to. This is a Rebecca Allen. If you give tomatoes names like that and you tell me a really good story, chances are I'm going to buy it. Baker Creek says that their employees have loved this tomato and that it tastes really well. So that speaks a lot for it. Now here's one called the Dester tomato. You can see my staples at the top. I did grow this one last year. Planted seeds straight in the ground. Didn't think they were ever going to come up and grow. I thought the heat was going to get them when they did come up. But they eventually came up and they grew. And I got a lot of Dester tomatoes off of it. Now, this is supposed to be a really, really, really good tasting tomato. And it tasted good. I will give it that. The problem with it was I grew it at the same time that I was growing those Cherokee purple tomatoes. And just nothing seemed to be as good as those. So I think I was a little hard on the Dester, when if I had just grown the Dester by itself, it might have been just fine. But because I was every night looking forward to, you know, if I had a Cherokee purple ready to pick and slice, I was just so much more into that. I kind of maybe gave Dester a short shrift, but I would grow it again. It did grow good, and seeds in the ground all the way up to a full plant, it did fine. Okay. This is a company, I just got these at a co-op in Macomb, Mississippi. They're called from the Bentley Seed Company. That's the name of the seed company. And this is the Jubilee Tomato. It's an orange tomato, an orange heirloom. Haven't grown it, don't know much about it. This is another one from the Bentley Seed Company called the Ace 55 VF. And this is just supposed to produce a mid-sized tomato. It says it grows good in containers, that this is a smaller plant for container gardens. So it must be a determinant. Okay, this one, I have not grown it, but I can tell you I love it because I got it for free. I love free seeds. When you order from Baker Creek, they'll send you a free packet of seeds most times. I don't know if that's something they always do, but most times they do. And that's how I've gotten a lot of my kale and kohlrabi seeds that they send. Well, I ordered from a company called Sand Hill Preservation Center. It's in Calamus, 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 Iowa. And I ordered a lot of beans, and when they sent my order, they sent me these. This makes a pink tomato. It's just like a little 3 to 5 ounce plum tomato, you know, good for canning. It's indeterminate, and it says the plant will really vine a lot, but it says that it's very productive and everything. But it's called a VB Russian, like initials, V period, B period, Russian. So I'm just curious to see what the VB Russian looks like when, and I'm curious to see what a pink plum tomato looks like. Most plum tomatoes that I have seeds for and that I see in catalogs are always red, but that's a pink one. So I'd be curious to see that. This tomato is in my schematic for this year. It's called the Atkinson tomato. I got this at the Feed and Seed store, Circle T. And this one was developed by Auburn University to grow good in the heat. Whenever I hear that, I like it because it gets so hot down here. And this was developed specifically to grow in the Deep South. So, and it was a long time ago that it was developed. And so it's tried and true. I'm going to try to grow the Atkinson this year because I really need some tomatoes. I want to grow heirlooms, but I really need some that will give me some production. You know, to be able to sell some tomatoes to people, you have to have production. So if this one was developed, and it's also what makes me think it's a decent tomato is it's sold by my co-op, and they usually carry brands that will grow down here in Louisiana and that are popular with other growers and farmers. So I'm trusting that, and I put it in my schematic, and so I'm just looking forward to growing it this year. This is a tomato called Nostrano Grosso, and it's by the South Georgia Seed Company. This tomato is supposed to be a very rare Italian heirloom. I have seen it in some catalogs before, but it's supposed to be very, very rare. And they only give you about 25 seeds in this little packet. But it's got, it's not just a round tomato. It's got lots of ribs on it. You know, it kind of makes like a flower shape when you grow it. And it's a beautiful tomato. I ordered from a company called Sustainable Mountain Agriculture Center. I found them on the website. It's right on here. It's www.heirlooms.org. I love that little website. They have, it's just a small operation. I think it's not huge, but they have a lot of seeds that are grown in Appalachia and in the areas up there in Tennessee and Kentucky and North Carolina, you know, all up in there. And just a lot of rare varieties that families have just preserved year after year, growing in their yard. A lot of them are named after people, and I just love that. They sell a lot of greasy beans, they call them, a lot of cut short beans and things like that. And I pretty much stuck with the beans when I ordered from them the first time or two. But the last time I ordered from them, I said, you know what, I'm just going to focus on tomatoes on this order. So I did, and I went through there and just chose a lot of different tomatoes that I just wanted to try. I don't know a lot about them. And some of these varieties, these older varieties, they really don't even tell you how many days they take to grow. So it's kind of an experiment, but I'm all about that. And I chose, I know I have one in here that I'm going to grow this year. But this one is one of the varieties. It's just called Willard Wynn. And it's a yellow tomato. It's a yellow tomato, and it's a German variety. This one is called Black Pear. Now, I said a while ago I was going to separate out cherry tomatoes and pear tomatoes. The reason I put this Black Pear with my regular size tomatoes is because it's a true heirloom, but it also is kind of odd, they said, because it will make a little pear tomato, which normally they're, you know, just a couple of inches tall. But it also will kick out on the same tree with the same little 2-inch tomatoes. It'll kick out some that are regular size. So that's very interesting. And that kind of shows me that it's a true heirloom. It hasn't been just so selected and modified, you know, that it only does a certain tomato all the time. It still will kick out a little mutation every now and then, and that'll grow a full-size tomato. So I thought I would just keep it with those seeds. This one is called the Eagle Fork Big Red. This originated in North Georgia. This is called the Wilson Yellow Gold. Wilson Yellow Gold. This is called the Whirly Red. I can't wait to try some of these. Here's a I probably ordered this one because of the name. It's called the Mary Rose McMurray. Just reminds you of somebody's mama that probably grew it. And this one is the one I put on my schematic to grow. It's called Claude Brown's Yellow Giant. And the reason it gets its name Giant is because it says that some of the tomatoes on here, some of them will grow up to 3 pounds. That is a huge tomato. And I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna put it out there. I'm not so much worried about selling these tomatoes. I just wanna try this one for me and just see what happens. I mean, if it's very productive, you know, I'll offer it up. But I just want to see if I can keep the hornworms off of it, and if I can keep it healthy and everything. I would love to just kind of let it come to a big size, you know, and then just keep going and see how big it'll get. The next company that I'm going to roll right into is Seed Savers Exchange. I just love Seed Savers. This first one is called an Eva Purple Ball Tomato. And this variety was brought to the United States from Germany in the 1800s. And it makes just like little 4 to 5 ounce tomatoes. Looks beautiful and sounds beautiful. This one is called the Rosso Sicilian. And you see the shape of that tomato? That's what I was talking about a while ago with the Nostrano Grosso. I said it's got little ribs kind of shaped like a flower. And that's the same kind of tomato there. So that's just beautiful. I mean, can you imagine cutting one of those and putting it on a sandwich with those ribs on it and everything? That's just beautiful. I love it. This one is called Mamie Brown's Pink Tomato. It's a pink tomato, a big, large pink tomato. This one is called a Canner Hole. Don't know why, but I always want to say a Hanner Cole. I don't know why. But anyway, it's a Canner Hole. It's originally out of Minnesota. Well, it's originally out of Germany, but a reverend in Minnesota donated the seeds to Seed Savers Exchange. And it just looks like a beautiful tomato. This one I put on my schematic. I'm just gonna trust them at Seed Savers Exchange. It's called an Italian Heirloom. And it said it won some taste tests among the Seed Savers Exchange members, and that it's very, very productive. They say it's one of the most productive varieties that they've ever had in their stock. I need that. So I'm gonna try that. I've got a place marked out for it already. This one I didn't put on my schematic, but man, I need to find somewhere to tuck some of these too. This is called the Black from Tula tomato. It's a Russian variety. And it says it was donated by seedswoman Marina Danilenko. Well, I was looking up something on the internet the other night, not on Seed Savers, just somewhere else, and it told the story of this lady, Maria Danilenko. And you know, when Russia went under communism and all their issues over there, they made all of their seeds over there be under state control. And I don't remember if it's her mother or daughter or whatever, but they just put in the effort to try to save heirloom seeds in Russia. And she ended up donating a lot of different varieties to Seed Savers in America so that saving of these seeds could perpetuate. So she just single-handedly kind of saved a lot of heirloom varieties in Russia. And this is the last one of my heirlooms. It's from Seed Savers Exchange, just different packaging. But it's the Kellogg's Breakfast Tomato. That's another one I really wanted to make room for because everybody that grows it talks about how good it is. Okay, next thing we're gonna do is talk about hybrids. And I don't have but a few. It won't take but a little bit. From Johnny's Seeds, I have one called the Martha Washington. This is a pink tomato. Makes like an 8 to 12 ounce tomato. And they say it tastes very, very good, but it has a soft skin on it. So it will kind of puncture easily. A tomato like that is not really good for shipping because it'll get bruised and damaged. But that doesn't mean it's not really good for home growing and for eating. So, and I'm not shipping them anywhere, so that'll be fine with me. This one right here is called an Estiva. It's a red tomato. It's supposed to produce very well in the heat. This one here is called, it's just really got a letters and numbers. It's called a BHN 589. And the reason I bought that is because it was made for greenhouses. It's selected and created for greenhouse production, and it doesn't need pollinators, which means you don't have to have bees flying around them, pollinating from plant to plant. That's why it's good for greenhouses. I'm not having my greenhouse anymore, so, but moving on. Not gonna dwell on it. This one is from Morse. It's called an Early Girl. This one's very well known. It's been around a while. I had heard somewhere that they may be phasing the Early Girl out, but when I got on the internet, I didn't see anything about that. If you know that for sure, or you know it's not true, then let me know. This is from Seeds from the South, and it's called the Celebrity Tomato. Now, the Celebrity Tomato is very well known, at least down here in the South. If you go to the hardware stores and to the nurseries and you buy transplants, usually they'll have Celebrity. I was not real thrilled with it last year. I did grow it. I got a good many tomatoes off of it. They were just average size. They weren't anything big, but I just didn't really think the flavor was worth it. It's a lot of people's go-to tomato. They grow Celebrity and they love it. I just didn't think the flavor was that great. There again, I was comparing everything to the Cherokee Purple, but you know, it'd be fine to grow to can and put up tomatoes and things like that. The flavor just didn't knock my socks off, so it's going to be a while before I worry about throwing that one back in the garden. This one is from Territorial Seed Company, and it's called the Tasty Lee, and it's a determinate tomato. It doesn't grow real big. All right, that's all my hybrids. Let's look at the cherry tomatoes and we'll be about done. Okay, here we have, from Johnny Seeds, I have Matt's Wild Cherry tomatoes. And before I really go any farther, I want to say I love growing cherry tomatoes. I did start some of those last year straight into the ground from seeds. They grew into, you know, pretty large bushes and put off cherry tomatoes for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I just love them. The year before that, I had put some transplants in the ground, and I had great luck with those too. I think I grew it's either the Super 100s or the Sweeties last year, and they did wonderful. And I just love them. They put out tomatoes. A lot of them will, they'll put out like this long cluster thing, you know, that's about that long, and it's just got tomatoes all down it. It's just so beautiful. And they usually start producing before your regular tomatoes. So you just, you know, you're waiting and waiting and waiting for those bigger tomatoes, and then your cherry tomatoes just start popping, and I love it. So I'm always gonna have room in my garden for cherry tomatoes. I just love them. Can't wait. And I think I have 6 of these varieties picked out for my garden this year. I think this is one of them, the Red Pearl. It's just an elongated shaped, grape type shaped tomato from Johnny's. I think I mixed in here for the cherry tomatoes. I've just got, like, the Matt's Wild Cherry is an heirloom, and the Red Pearl is an heirloom. And this one from Johnny's is called a Sakura tomato. It's a hybrid, but it was developed for greenhouses. So this would be a great one to grow in a greenhouse or high tunnel. Okay, jump into Burpees. I just got these seeds the other day. Oh, I can't even remember where I was. But it's called the Red Currant Tomato. They make little, like tiny 1/2-inch tomatoes, but it's supposed to be very prolific. This kind of plant is supposed to really sprawl. They say definitely grow it up against a fence or something like that, where it can just sprawl, and it reseeds itself. So the next year, unless you tear the ground up and just the seeds are gone or whatever, the next year you'll end up with more red currant tomato plants there the next year. This is from Burpees, and it's called a yellow pear tomato. You see those pear-shaped little small tomatoes like that? They're about 2 inches. It's just beautiful though. I think I have this one on my schematic as well. This one I picked up at Tractor Supply the other day when I was there. It's a Honeycomb Hybrid. It says it puts off like 12 to 15 inch trusses, long cascades of the tomatoes. I really just picked it up because it was orange, and I like to have a little variety of colors. I feel like if I'm going to be offering cherry tomatoes for sale to people, it'd be nice to maybe have your reds, have your yellows, have your oranges, but then maybe have some little baskets that are just full of a mixed variety. So, or let them pick what they want. You know, I just think for selection reasons, that's what I needed to do. This one is from Park Seed. I grew it last year. You can tell with my packaging, I kind of rip into stuff. But it's a little yellow tomato, and it did grow fine last year. Seed straight into the ground. I didn't have any plant starts for those things last year. And this one is called, from Park Seed, a Patio Choice Tomato. And by the name, you can tell that you can kind of grow this in a container on your patio. You know, just easy to grow. And their picture in their catalog just showed it covered with yellow tomatoes. So it puts off a lot of tomatoes. This one is called a Tumbler. It's from Pine Tree Garden Seeds. And again, they recommended growing this one like in baskets or things like that. This one is from Fairy Morse. It's called the Sweetie. And it's supposed to produce just huge amounts of tomatoes. And the next one from Fairy Morse is called the Super 100. So I have both of these. I couldn't remember which one it was that I had transplants for last year that grew so well. So I'm just putting both of these in my planting schematic this year. And they probably will both do great. I have this one from Seeds for the South, and it's called a Sun Sugar Tomato. Now these, I think Hoss Tools sells these too. Probably a lot of people do. But this Sun Sugar is a little orange, small cherry tomato, and it's supposed to taste like candy. It's supposed to be really, really good. So I put it in my schematic. It's one of the 6 I'm growing, and I can't wait. Well, I just said 6, and I realized I have this one called the Mexico Midget Tomato from Seed Savers Exchange. And I just realized I put that in my schematic in my upper garden. The other 6 that I have are in my lower garden. So I'm really growing 7 varieties. So, but this Mexico Midget, look at that coloring and look at that tomato. And so they say that they just produce a lot of tomatoes. So that's what I'm looking for, production. This one is called the Heart Yellow Cherry Tomato from Seed Savers Exchange. It says it's supposed to be very prolific and starts producing really early. So I have that one on my schematic as well. This one, the top is stapled. I think I started to grow this one, but I didn't. I don't believe I did, but it's called the Chadwick Cherry Tomato. It also goes by the name of the Camp Joy Cherry. And I just thought that was crazy because I never hear the name Camp Joy, but I'm Camp Joy Farms, so I wanted to grow a tomato that was the Camp Joy tomato. And I'm definitely gonna probably put it in the garden soon. The last cherry tomato I have is called the Robe Mountain Tomato. And it's another one I got from Sustainable Mountain Agriculture Center. And so I am so excited. This is a pink tomato, by the way. I want to thank you for joining me tonight for my 3rd in my Seedsapalooza series. I hope you enjoy it. I hope that one day if you find these on YouTube later on, you'll go back and look at all the different ones. I'm going to do pole beans soon. I would love to do, maybe one night I'll combine my cowpea seeds and my lima beans, something like that, just to kind of throw a couple of those varieties together. I don't have an extreme amount of lima bean seeds or cowpeas, but I do love to grow them, especially the cowpeas. I don't know what all else seeds I have. I have a bunch. So I'll just share them in little segments. until I maybe have 8 or 9 episodes in this series, and we'll go through them. I want to get this series kind of done before I get very, very busy in the spring, and before I break open a lot of those seeds and use them. So these Seedsapalooza videos might kind of be coming at you for a little while, but that's okay. Just whenever you find them on YouTube, whenever you're watching them, try to go back and watch the other episodes and see all about it. And it might inspire you to grow a certain type that I've grown and I really loved. This is Lainey with Camp Joy Farms. I'm so thankful that you were here with me tonight. Please subscribe. I need people to subscribe and to comment and to like the videos if you don't mind. YouTube loves that. The more you have likes and comments and subscribers, the more they'll share your videos, which hopefully leads to more subscribers and things like that. So as I try to grow this channel, I'd appreciate your help with anything that you can do with that. Just like or comment or subscribe. Thank you so much. You have a great evening. Bye-bye.